Okay, we have a production notification. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So welcome all of you from wherever you are joining us today. This is the 41st APEA and SLEvA webinar brought to you by Asia Pacific Evaluation, Sri Lanka Evaluation Association, EvalYouth Sri Lanka, and Center for Evaluation of University of Sri Jayewardenepura. Hope you all are having a great day and experiencing and enjoying Youth in Evaluation Week momentum. So as some of you may know, today is the third day of Youth in Evaluation Week. And for those who don't know, Youth in Evaluation Week is convened by Eval for Action Advocacy Campaign, its regional partners, and the EvalYouth Global Network. It is a 5-day-long program aiming to be an inclusive and intergenerational gathering of young and emerging evaluators and the global evaluation community. So it mainly focuses on advancing and meaningful engagement of youth in evaluation. So along with this movement, APEA and SLEvA are organizing their 41st webinar on a youth transformative participatory approach as a tool for enhancing social justice and equity through evaluation. Next slide, please. So I'm Hasithi Samarasinghe, co-leader for EvalYouth Asia and co-founder of EvalYouth Sri Lanka and lead of Asia Pacific Communications Hub. And I will be your moderator for this event. Next slide. So yeah, before moving to the main event, we have a few production reminders. Please keep your microphone and video disabled all the time to lessen the internet bandwidth so that you can preserve the event quality. And if you have any production related questions or any questions for our speaker, you can always put it in the chat bar so that if it is a production related one, our production team members will approach you. If not, we will direct it to our speaker. Next slide. So with that, without taking any more time, I will pass the floor to Sabeen Sharic. Sabeen is the co-leader of EvalYouth Sri Lanka. Sabeen, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Hasithi. Hi, everyone. Welcome, everybody who is joining from every nook and corner of the globe. So as we all know that evaluation is currently regarded as a central tool for learning and improving accountability in relation to public policies and social programs. It is also understood as a process for boosting equity and social justice. Equity and social justice are vitally important when working with young people and adults within community development projects and practices. In order to accommodate youth participations in evaluation activities, there are many conventional formalized approaches and interpretations, but they are falling short in terms of efficacy and accountability of policy and professional-led responses to youth marginalization and inequality. They are merely professional agendas based on normative assumptions of youth. But participative approaches as well. Today, we have gathered here to listen to such an alternative participatory approach that enables youth participations. That is the youth transformative participatory approach. So we are eagerly waiting to get to know how this youth transformative participatory approach is a good tool to enhance social justice and equity through evaluations. I wish you all the participants a better knowledge sharing session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabeen. Next slide, please. So thank you for that welcome and introduction. So now we will be moving on to our speaker, Khalil Bitar. Khalil is a co-founder and former chair of EvalYouth Global Network and also an eminent lead of with Academy for Nature at the University of Bern. Khalil, over to you, Khalil.
Thank you, Hasithi, and welcome everyone. I'm very glad to join SLEvA today and all of you to present some of the experiences we had in EvalYouth and this youth transformative participatory approach. I'll just share my screen first. Hopefully it will work fine. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we do,
Yes,
Khalil.
Perfect, thank you. So today we are doing this 41st webinar of SLEvA. So that's something that has been always accumulating. I had the pleasure of participating before in SLEva's and APEA's webinars and conferences. So I'm very glad that you also could join. And it's part, and especially because it's part of the Youth in Evaluation Week. This is the first actually time we have this week. So it's another opportunity. And the topic at hand is the Youth Transformative Participatory Approach as a tool for enhancing social justice and equity through evaluation. Quite a mouthful with a lot of words. So we can maybe look at them a little bit. And it's important that, we can start defining what we mean by youth and transformative and participatory, and the approach itself, even a tool, and what is really enhancing social justice and equity, and what is it through evaluation. And if evaluation with capital letter means the field or evaluation practice, there are many ways of looking at this. Actually, before jumping into all of this, I wanted to ask you if all of us could write in the chat, but not click enter yet, if we could share what does transformative means to us. If you think about a transformative experience that you have, what could that be? And I hope this is clear to everybody, just to see what is transformative. We can go to Google and see what is the definition or say the definition about the change. But for you personally, what is something that is transformative? And maybe we take 30 seconds or so for everyone to type, but not click enter yet. And then we click together and see. So 30 seconds. I see some colleagues already started typing and also clicking, but now is the time if you like to click on enter and let's see some of the responses we have. So we have here change for positive outcomes. We have positive change, out of the box change, nowhere scanned. That's okay, thank you. Any more responses? So again, we see from answers that we're talking about positive change that transforms the status quo, generating profound change, going into the deep roots, structural change. And we have more from about structure. Okay, this is great. Thanks to all colleagues and participants who shared with us their wisdom and their views. Yes, we have another one about lasting change, about on someone or something, and the aspect of learning from Sabeen. And I think this is good just to consider that we have similar understanding for transformative mean that there is something that is positive and that is drastic, important, sometimes revolutionary change, something big, not small, gradual change that needs long time, but also does not have strong impact. And similar with all other concepts here, really, that we have with youth. Some countries, and some communities define youth from different from other societies. What is participatory is different. But within the framework of this presentation, we will have some understanding, very much so from the EvalYouth perspective, about what is youth, for example, what is the approach, the participative approach, and what does it mean, and what we mean by social justice and equity. And the presentation and the resources here are all relevant and related to this publication. Something that we work with colleagues, something stemmed from EvalYouth, and something that is a building block. There are also other building blocks. So one chapter in this book, and I really highly recommend to all of you to read, not only the chapter, I mean all the book, because you have the evaluation for transformational change, opportunities and challenges. And you have 10 chapters, I think, there that they're really important. One of them was written about the revolution in the making, evaluation done well in the era of the SDGs with the youth participatory approach. And you notice here the focus is on the participatory approach. And later on, we'll come back to what's the difference between just participatory approach and the transformative participatory approach. More recent articles, this book chapter, this also book chapter, but not published yet, but it's in printing or in publication, is the Permission to Dream and Act, the Youth in Evaluation Movement and the Power of Transformation. With EvalYouth Chair, current Vice Chair, current Chair, and also with Marco Ciccone, who is the co-chair of Eval for Action, and also the director of UNFPA Evaluation Office. And this is where we start to include also about the transformative part, transformation, not only just the participation. And finally, this last article, journal article, which will be, it's also in printing now with the new directions for evaluation journal was accepted, and it's coming in these few days. It's about the youth transformative participatory approach, particularly in education and training, evaluator education and training, and sharing from your EvalYouth experience. With leaders and youth, they were young evaluators or young and emerging evaluator leaders from the global south, from different places. This is all available as well on ResearchGate. You can find them. Some of the ones not published yet, you will have the abstract and everything, but I'm happy to share if any of the participants like to have that. So I mentioned those publication bases where the approach is really based on, but it is based on practice, really on a journey of youth in evaluation. Something that started even before EvalYouth, during the years of Eval Partners, which EvalYouth comes from Eval Partners, and IUCE, the International Organization for Cooperation in Evaluation. Those two, this one, Eval Partners, is a partnership between VOBEs, Voluntary Organization for Professional Evaluators or Evaluation, and United Nations agencies. But VOBEs, evaluation associations, are critical to this this network, Eval Partners. And EvalYouth started in 2015 through actually starting, the whole idea came from a document that's called the Eval Agenda, basically the evaluation agenda from 2016 to 2020. So a lot of work or groundwork has been done there before. Eval Partners actually started in 2012, and IUC even before. And then comes EvalYouth with the whole experience of young and emerging evaluators actually shaping a network for all of them around the globe. I just selected some, you can see from different regions. Through 8 years, we have, I think now 25 chapters, if not more. I have not been chair for 2 years, so I don't know exact number now, but we have chapters sprouting everywhere around the world. And finally, which this event is happening part of the Decade of Evaluation for Action, Eval for Action campaign, which is a partnership co-founded or a campaign co-founded by UNFPA Evaluation Office, EvalYouth, and Global Parliamentarian Forum, CUN Agency, Youth, and a network for parliamentarians who are really concerned about evaluation. So you see how important is that, and a lot of more activities. I think many of you would be aware, and if not, you can search and you can hear from the colleagues as well during this week and before and after. And this is really the group that started a lot of this work that was then, this network. A group of 23 young and emerging evaluators meeting 2015 in Kathmandu, Nepal, thinking and selecting their priorities, what they want to focus on, completely selecting these priorities. Nobody decided for them, and playing critical role in the Eval agenda priorities as well. Then there was so much participation, training, a global movement, but still on a small scale at the beginning, which then exploded into so many more activities on different tracks, conferences, annual virtual conference with leading evaluators from all around the world, young and experienced, with publications, with partnerships, with creating other networks, with the chapters, some of the ones we mentioned, webinars, and all of that was done for years, but interestingly, by years. And when I say years, young and emerging evaluators, sorry for using that term a lot, but it becomes a habit. So as you see now, just to talk a little bit about the approach, we set the background, like zoom back and out a little bit. You see, we talk about what we want to discuss today, focusing on the terminology, knowing that there are a lot of different understanding of these things that we have to be careful with it. It's a conversation between all of us, and I hope the discussion and questions and answer, we can shed light on that. Then there's the theoretical or at least writing and publication about it, but also the network itself. And in each part, I will, try to dwell a little bit. The theoretical part, I will talk about it later, and also the practical part, how things done. What does it really mean? Or is another buzzword where we say transformative, and we don't transform anything? Because unfortunately, it happens, decolonization and transformation and so on, and then you see the practices are not transformative or decolonizing at all sometimes, not always. So here, we also have to think about, as mentioned before, we have the youth participatory evaluation, often known as YPE approach, and the one we're focusing on today, the youth transformative participatory approach. What is the difference? So this youth participatory evaluation is not something new. Something has been in the evaluation for a long time. Essentially, it is about involving young people in conducting evaluation, not young and emerging evaluators, but young people in general, youth, and not engaging them in one part, let's say, data collection phase. And not only as informants, for example, but in all phases and in all aspects. This is very important to the youth participatory evaluation. It seeks basically to empower young people so their voices are really heard in evaluations that we do on the field, in the field. It doesn't say so much about the evaluation field per se, or publications about evaluation and so on, or how we organize the evaluation. It's mainly working with youth who are stakeholders that we interview or consult, or maybe even incorporate in our evaluation as part of the analysis and the management of the evaluation. But it really departs from the business as usual approach, in which young people are always as data sources, So this is the youth participatory evaluation, the focus on participation in all aspects. And it's very important. But we have also a need for something more, and this is where EvalYouth contribution, our publications about the youth transformative participatory approach. Here, this is rooted in EvalYouth experience and put forward by EvalYouth leaders, members, and volunteers. Maybe some people wrote more about it, but it's really came from everybody who participated, whether a volunteer member or leader in EvalYouth since 2015. And it focuses mainly on young and emerging evaluators who are defined in EvalYouth as people or evaluators who are between the ages of 18 and 35. Anyone 18 to 35 could be a young and emerging evaluator, of course, depending on their experience, if they have 5 years of experience or less, and so on. And basically, the definition of the YTP, the Youth Transformative Participatory Approach, is the process of working with, so see the involvement, but also the working with and following the lead, and this is key, of young people, where their cultural context, lived experience, and personal values guide action. Not only consulting them, not only having them in the process, but actually following their lead. Like the youth participatory evaluation, the youth transformative participatory approach strives to include and involve, of course, young people, but focuses on needs, as we said, in all parts of the evaluation inquiry. However, it's really, the aspect about the youth being in the driving seat, and they have the leadership with a nothing about us without us frame is key to this approach. And finally, and I just put these points as key, but the publication have much more, of course, analysis and explanation, but it considered the intersectional power and marginalization aspect, both the power and marginalization intersectionality, whether socioeconomic, ethnic, religious, cultural, all of these aspects are considered in the youth transformative participatory approach. And I will say in a bit also how exactly. So what are the guiding principles that really distinguish this approach from others? We have these four principles for what makes really the youth transformative participatory approach. First, that the practical knowledge is as valid, as useful as well as technical and scientific knowledge. Often, young evaluators or emerging evaluators, if they don't have deep scientific or technical knowledge, they're ruled out. But the practical knowledge, life knowledge, how people are experiencing things from their life experiences is so rich, and sometimes, unfortunately, it's neglected in the evaluation process, or sometimes it comes on the account of people from the global south, where people always who studied in certain universities in certain countries, their knowledge and experience is valued so much more, where it's not actually right. Sometimes people have so much more knowledge and wisdom than those who have the highest degrees. Second is that power and decision-making are context-bound and ebb and flow between the space where experienced evaluators and young evaluators initiate work. So we're not saying here that we're ruling out experienced evaluators and young evaluators should do everything, but it is different roles, different times, different tasks, different contexts, and sometimes the young evaluator or emerging evaluator should be in the lead, sometimes the experienced one. This flexibility and understanding the power and decision-making is very important. And this is also could be very empowering for young evaluators, which we'll see also from EvalYouth experience. And the third principle is that deliberation. Deliberation in the sense of Paulo Freire's deliberation, pedagogy, and the pedagogy of the oppressed, where deliberation is a process where students, when they are students, but also citizens, ask questions, challenge, reach a conclusion together, decide together. If they disagree, they put their disagreement together. But always this process, educational or decision-making, is targeted, and its compass is towards making social change through this deliberation process for a good reason. Not a process where, not a process where you have, not a process where you have only certain people, you know, dominating the decision-making process and others. And this goes very well with what we said about equity as well. And fourth is that activism is a fundamental means to realizing transformative social change. Maybe some might say, there's nothing new in this statement. Activism is a fundamental means to realizing transformative social change. But you cannot believe how controversial this statement is within evaluation. Just to saying activism and evaluators, sometimes it's actually very controversial, because we're evaluators, we should be objective. And we say yes to objectivity, but at the same time, objectivity and evaluators can still advocate for the powerless, poor, the marginalized people. There's nothing wrong with that. At least this approach says that. And hence you can already maybe saw that this approach has roots in the writings of critical theorists. For example, I reference Freire. And also we have in the evaluation field foundation for that. That is the transformative evaluation theorists. And here a good example would be Donna Mertens. And there's another resource that I did it now, I could add it later, you know, transformative evaluation. That's very important. And you see, like other transformative approaches, the youth transformative participatory approach views the purpose of evaluation. This is very, very important. And please, you know, this may be the most important part I would like to leave you with, and even hear your point of view. The purpose of evaluation is not merely interpreting truth or reality. It's about co-producing knowledge. That's what we do. We co-produce knowledge and work towards empowerment, emancipation, equity, and social justice. In the bottom line, you'll see that many of the things we're working on, even when we're writing the report, we're talking about if targeted population have been reached, if this program has empowered who those interventions we target of empowering. So we're not just interpreting truth or reality. And who can interpret truth, reality? Most of the time we write this, we collect evidence, but we never 100% sure. We rather think about evaluation as co-producing knowledge and working towards empowerment and emancipation, equity, and social justice. So far, I have been rather theoretical, speaking about how it is linked to the critical theorism, theorists, and theories. What are those? I try to make them a little bit concrete, but they are, I admit, rather theoretical. Sounds like a journal article, and this part. But nothing of that didn't come from the field. It really comes from something like this, something we really used in EvalYouth a lot, that actions speak much louder than words. And hence, just to share a little bit about examples from EvalYouth experience, doing exactly that. EvalYouth was launched in 2015, as I mentioned, during the second global forum, 23 years, I already mentioned that. But the very nature of the launch, how it was launched, the priority setting of the network was all by young and emerging evaluators. And everything was focused on equity, empowerment, social justice. So Eval agenda was influenced strongly by young and emerging evaluators there and after its implementation. The governance structure, you have regional representation. From each region, you have young and emerging evaluator leader. So the whole setting of the agenda, the prioritization, what to do, resource usage, nobody is telling you should do that and should not do that. 8 years of that, and look what happened. Maybe some of the colleagues, the participants, not or less familiar with EvalYouth. Some people would be more familiar with EvalYouth. Basically, I would say from 8 years ago, nobody heard the word EvalYouth. Then what do we have now? A global network of thousands of volunteers globally. And chapters, national and regional chapters, partnerships with UN agencies and private sector foundations and so on, a mentoring program, annual conference, mentoring program, of course, for 5 years. Anyways, all of these EvalYouth provide a platform really for young and emerging to collectively deliberate, organize, facilitate, share, run mentoring programs. Many of the youth who are part of EvalYouth, and we have amazing leaders, by the way, who are organizing this event and so many other events. And at least now in this webinar, I see colleagues from the Asia Pacific region and the different chapters of EvalYouth. Many of these youth friends and colleagues, they said it's the first time that we facilitated webinar. Now they have production teams that they can do conferences. This is something that EvalYouth, and it was exactly like this. Set your priority as youth, work on it. You will be supported with what is needed, but you are in charge. And this was very important. But not in charge just to implement an agenda somebody decide. You have to implement. So you have the ownership. In doing so, really, this demonstrated to the world the capacity of young and emerging evaluators in one side, and also showcased how their skills are needed, because almost every strong evaluation society now, or a network, has this engine of young and emerging evaluators who basically either graduated from EvalYouth or still active activists in EvalYouth and volunteers. So far, after 8 years, the network has facilitated capacity strengthening activities for thousands of youth from across the globe. But all of these activities were always translated into different languages. 6, 7 languages, 5 languages, 6 languages in the global EvalYouth annual virtual conference, and also in the global mentoring program. Maybe less language in the mentoring program, I think, but the possibility was always that there are different languages reaching. Of course, you cannot reach. Of course, if you have a young evaluators who have very bad access to internet in some country here or there, maybe couldn't even hear about EvalYouth. There's so much still for us to do and for young and emerging evaluators to do. But the reach was amazing in terms of equity being really fundamental principle. And I know my time is almost up. So just to say the last point is that EvalYouth as a network, just to say that overall selection criteria was set by young and emerging evaluators for every scholarship we have, and we do have scholarship for young and emerging to attend some of the best training globally. And the criteria always takes the region, the gender, the the ability, physical ability, all of these factors, and this criteria is used for everything. So always this diversity, and diversity is not seen because we just want to, do DEI or something. No, it's because we believe that diversity is a strength. So EvalYouth as a network, in its design, mandate, structure, has directly and indirectly instilled in youth the consciousness of addressing social equity and inequality and injustice. Using the transformative participatory approach and the evaluator education and training approach within there has really built core values already in people, but when they have the space and time to work on it, has helped many of them, and many of them from the global south, realize and try to replace this dominant Western, and I'm not saying Western as bad, but when it's dominant, and business as usual approach that controls so much of our field. And I will end up with just one or two sentences, but this saying that I really like and appreciate, and I would say, and I'd like to leave you with: if not now, then when? And if not us, then who? And this was really EvalYouth motto, unspoken motto, by the way. It's not written anywhere. And you see that people always thought, it's the time, and it's us that we can try to contribute to change. And this is finally, thank you for listening. I'd always like to share as well this very nice cartoon. EvalYouth researcher asked if I answer the questions, the evaluator said I question answers. But of course, I welcome your questions, and thank you so much for listening. Back to you, Hasithi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khalil. That was very interesting and insightful presentation indeed. Thank you very much again. So if our participants have questions for our presenter, for Khalil, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat so that we can, one by one, we can address them. While they are asking questions, Khalil, there is a comment saying the youth transformative participatory principles really resonate for me, and they are very much aligned with decolonizing MNE and development broadly. That's from Candy. If any of our participants have I would kindly request all of our participants to stay muted. So do we have any questions for Khalil? Khalil, do you have any other experiences related to this, which is not, of course, included in the presentation, to share with us? Because I know personally, while going through this participants, which I can see a lot of EvalYouth members here. So do you have anything, any message for them? Well,
thank you, Hasithi. And of course, colleagues and participants, you can put the question. I don't know if the producers allow for participants to even unmute themselves when it's possible to ask their questions if they don't like to type. But just to reflect on what Candy has said, that it's really these principles resonate with her. I'm very glad to hear so, because as I said, sometimes we thought, oh, they could sound a little bit theoretical and this approach, but it's very, very important that it resonates with people working on the ground, working in M&E and development work. And the question remains, of course, how to employ these principles, how to advocate for them. And of course, I mentioned the EvalYouth experience, the EvalYouth Action experience, but also organizations, even not ones that focus on youth participation and empowerment, can do it. And it will be interesting to hear from some colleagues about also their experience doing that. Thank you.
Sorry, I was talking mute. I think we have questions coming up. So Darshini is saying, thank you for this insightful presentation. And can we have some examples of how these youth participatory practices were able to question and transform a development practice in specific ways?
And this is a question from Darshini, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Darshini, for the question. One way of looking at this is actually mentioned of one of the chapters, the last one I referenced about using youth participatory transformative evaluation. And we mentioned something about how young and emerging evaluators, particularly from the African continent, are aligning with evaluators who focus on the Made in Africa evaluation and really challenging the standards, if we may say, norm within evaluation, where a certain an evaluator experience evaluation, the usual suspect, come from completely different country or continent, and perhaps never worked in this country, and comes as experienced evaluator because she or he, usually he, has 30 years of experience, and comes, and the national evaluator is treated sometimes, unfortunately, like a secretary. Okay, you translate, or you come with me to interviews. And those young and emerging evaluators are challenging that, saying, with the Made in Africa approach and a framework, which is a very strong framework in evaluation, that we have stronger role as young evaluators and African evaluators and Asian evaluators and so on, to have a stronger role in evaluation, and this is one thing, though. It's not about that who does it, but also the approach. A lot of people are using indigenous frameworks, theories, approaches, whether in Asia Pacific or even in Europe, in other places, in Middle East and North Africa, where indigenous ways of thinking, they're different from necessarily Western way of thinking or approach. Of course, it is appropriate in some ways and not appropriate all the time, but they're questioning that. So these are two examples about the who does evaluation and how that could be perhaps, hopefully, a response to your question.
Thank you. So the next question is from Maria. She's asking, do you think most seasoned evaluators or evaluation firms would be open to such a high level of leadership and agency by youth and less experienced evaluators? And what has been the feedback you have received since publishing this work? That's one question. Do you want me to read out the second as well?
I see that. And how does this approach affect and benefit development outcomes ultimately? Great question as usual from Maria, my friend. And I can tell her, remember together when we were in EPDET in Canada in 2013, and we were wondering, both of us, how come, all the trainers at that time, we didn't even have one trainer from the global south or like a professor who were teaching us, and nothing against that. They were amazing scholars and evaluators, but it was not really evaluators from the global south or people of color or so on. And I asked Maria if she sees any difference now that that we are more open to learning from other evaluators coming from different perspectives, different regions, and in a way, although it's very, very difficult and needs time, that this process, this idea or mentality to always listening to certain category or certain people or certain gender or certain, that is breaking down. And look, now we are in this conference by the SLEvA, the Sri Lanka Evaluation Investigation. You know, 10 years ago, there were most of the time things are happening in the global north. And amazingly, to answer your questions, that these champions that we, you know, from the global north, but also from the global south, were very, 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 very supportive of this idea. Of course, there was always resistance, but some of the most renowned, most visionary evaluators, who are actually also most read evaluators and so on, have been welcoming this approach, and we're called to speak about it in the best forums. I mean, I presented a few years ago, in 2019, in the plenary of the American Evaluation Association with 3,000, you know, colleagues in present. And my other colleagues who also wrote about this approach had that. And we had partnerships with those evaluators from all around the world. So I would say, yes, there has been a lot of good view of that approach, but I always wonder how much in practice, you know, you can do webinars and conferences and so on. When they go and practice evaluation, how they work with young people, that I cannot tell you 100%, because I would be answering, speculating. I have no specific, you know, evidence-based answer to that.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. So Candy is asking, as an experienced M&E practitioner who mostly works on designing M&E frameworks and systems, how can I make sure to integrate youth participatory transformative principles in my work? I suppose that hiring a YE as intern or assistant and then giving him or her space to provide input lead might be one option. What else can be done that would be more substantive?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I think, you know, hiring or working with intern assistant, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, including people, because usually young and emerging evaluators find it so difficult to be even in the field when they're asked to have 4 or 5 years of experience. But I will say, really, being a champion for young and emerging evaluators and youth, whatever this means to you, champion in the sense of really seeing their value. And if you really believe so, you're working with them. I told you the experience of EvalYouth, they did magic, and I'm really not exaggerating. So if you see this value of young and emerging evaluators, and you will find a way. Of course, I can suggest some ways for you now. I would say it's not enough to have years to be on years as interns or assistants. I would say have them in your board, have them do evaluations, you know. But you might find this not appropriate for your organization. So I would say it's up to you what you do. We have offered a framework where we say these guiding principles about deliberation, about how young and emerging evaluators work with. But speaking of, you know, during the Youth in Evaluation Week, there are the standards that, you know, EvalYouth, Global Parliamentarian Forum, and UNFPA Evaluation Office, through the campaign, Eval for Action, they have the standards, and they have them for private sectors, for organizations, it's about engaging youth. So it's very accessible, and maybe Hasithi or other colleagues can maybe offer us please the link, and you have even assessment form to see how much you are involving these. I hope that, you know, answer, and more than happy to always, if you have a question or something about particular situation, of course, more than happy to answer your question.
So thank you, Khalil. Yeah, thank you very much for mentioning the standards. Actually, as we're speaking now, there is another set of standards launching today, focusing on private sector organizations. so and academia. So definitely, I will soon share the link as Khalil mentioned. So please follow that as well. And Sausan, thank you for joining us and speaking from my mind. I also like Khalil's the last words, I would say, like in the presentation, if not now, when, and if not us, then who. So she's also saying Giga, great presentation, and she's really interested in the about us, not without us statement. And I can already see it is as a framework to be used by youth for years to come. I also like the focus. Okay, my screen is going. Okay, also like the focused use of word transformative, as everything now is becoming transformative, hence losing its meaning for the trend. Moving forward, what tangible elements do you see this framework highlighting? And how can we, as part of this webinar, support in the transformation?
Sausan is already supporting a lot in this transformation because she's part of this whole movement. The EvalYouth MENA, she has been doing all of this. It's just been again being the champion who you are. Exactly when we started EvalYouth Global, we also started in our region EvalYouth MENA, and then we were like 2-3 people, and then we have evaluators. I'm not going to categorize everybody, but imagine with me, 50, 60, 70 years old evaluator. It's nothing, I'm not ageist. I love people of all ages, but they are the consultants. They are the ones who are getting all the consultancies, their work, and young evaluators, very difficult for them to enter the field and so on. And then Sausan and I and other colleagues, joined EvalYouth, started with EvalYouth, and then volunteer for it. We said, oh no, cannot just be ourselves. Let's share with our colleagues, and started EvalYouth chapters in the MENA region and bring more people. It's like walking in the street or a nice way, imagine it. And then once you see nice things, you kind of bring more people with you to join you. You can, what is it? I'm very bad at remembering sayings, but there's this saying that is by walking alone, you can. The point is, if you walk with others, you can go a long way and you can do a lot. And this is my question. And also Maria asked before, she said about what the outcomes of that. Of course, it's something to see. But I think one thing is really changing this status quo that we have here now. Still, I wouldn't say change at all. We see inequality everywhere. We see injustice everywhere. We see 10 people in the US have more money than 50% of the global population. In many countries, it's exactly the same thing. You have a certain field that everybody's writing about decolonization, but nothing is decolonized. So what are the outcomes? The outcomes is something that we don't have now, something better, hopefully. And on development in specific, you will have a young evaluator or even a local evaluator, not young, evaluating his or her community's work, being so active, being involved, having really good experience with a lot of evaluators around the world. Really, it's about equity, about justice, about having, different ways how we do our business currently. The business as usual approach.
Thank you, Khalil. I think we're almost up with the time. Thank you very much, and thank you for our participants for bringing up this, very questions as well. I'm sorry, I am having a bit of technical issue here. I can't access chat box right now. So I think it's the questions are we addressed everything, right, Khalil?
I think so. I think there
Okay.
are no pending question there.
Okay, great. So thank you, everyone. With that, we will move on to the end of this event. Okay, now it's time for the group picture. So I invite all of you to switch on your cameras and join us for the group photo. So our production team can let us know when it's done. Please give them like a couple of seconds to capture all of your faces.
Amol, over to
Say cheese,
you.
everyone. Amol. Say cheese, people.
Yes.
It's an evaluation week. So
The prize is for the one who holds the smile longest.
yeah, exactly. So Amol, is it done? Please let us know. We are waiting for the production team's cue.
Yes, I'm taking first the second page. Smile, guys.
Smile, everyone.
Okay, it's done. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, everyone. Next slide, please, Ren. Okay, so now again, Amol, I would like to invite you to the floor to give closing remarks. So everyone, welcome Amol Suresh. He's the co-leader of EvalYouth Asia. Amol, over to you.
Thank you, Hasithi. Yeah, so as everybody have pointed out that it was a very interesting session, Khalil, because I personally was very excited and very curious what is youth transformative participatory approach, because we have seen community participation, indigenous participation, but what is youth transformative participation? So thanks a lot for the explaining this and introducing us to a new concept. And I would like to thank you for putting the EvalYouth experience in such a large canvas, because I'm also being a part of EvalYouth, but I have not seen EvalYouth as I have seen it in a very, maybe a micro, very narrow concept, like we are doing things for the YEs, but not at such a large perspective. So thank you for expanding at least my vision, and I hope that everyone has expanded their vision and looking at EvalYouth as in this lens which Khalil has provided us. And yeah, so you have very aptly put the significance of the leadership that we are nurturing in EvalYouth in the EvalYouth moment. So thank you for that. We started our webinar by knowing the definition of transformative. We all have very different definition, and Saswan rightly pointed out that because of the use of the terms, the terms tend to lose their meaning. But we had participants actively participated and gave us their definitions of what is transformative for them, what is participatory for them. I would say, as someone pointed out, the guiding principles of the participatory youth transformative participatory approach you gave us, it is quite relatable to many of our work, and the terms that you introduced, nothing about us without us, or if not when, if not us, then who. It was very interesting and very, very empowering as a youth, being included in the decision making, being the sense of empowerment that this approach gives, right? And the last cartoon was very interesting. That gives that explains the difference between who is a researcher and who is an evaluator. That researcher answers questions and evaluator questions the answers. right? And I would say the most interesting concept that struck with me, which explains this cartoon, is the purpose of evaluation. There was some mention of in your PPT, purpose of evaluation. Why we are doing? We are not just fact finding. We are doing for some purpose like social justice or equity, empowerment. So that was one thing that struck with me, because purpose is something that we usually associate with youth, because as a, if there is an infant cannot think about a purpose in life, or if old people, they have lived their life, they do not have to do with purpose. But purpose is something we associate with youth, and that's why the purpose of evaluation, that concept is very interesting, and obviously it will go very good with the youth transformative participatory approach. Yeah, so I would like to thank Khalil for this interesting presentation, Hasithi for moderating this session very wonderfully. I would like to thank our organizers, APEA, SLEvA, EvalYouth Sri Lanka, Center for Evaluation, and yeah, we are in the Youth in Evaluation Week, so thanks for the team. And the production team, thank you very much. And yeah, last but not the least, all the participants for being so patient, for so asking insightful questions. Yeah, thank you very much, and over to you, Hasithi.
Thank you, Amol. I think we have one question. Maybe Khalil, you can, we can, I'm not sure what is your name, but we will definitely write you through SLEvA coordinator. So just before you leave, we have a few reminders to make. So join us for our next webinar in May 30th. It will be on charting a path forward, insights on SDG monitoring and evaluation in Asia Pacific. So I'm pretty sure this is also going to be a very wonderful webinar. So please join us. Next. Okay, and this is something new. So we are, I think if you're like already connected to APEA or EvalYouth Asia network, you might have seen these slides circulating. So we are having our 4th APEA conference and Evaluation Asia 2023, as well as 4th Asia Pacific Winter School for Young and Emerging Evaluators 2023 in person this time in Philippines, Manila. So stay tuned with our social media handles, and you will get the registration links in coming months. So we invite all of you to apply for this and see us. Definitely we can meet in Manila, Philippines in December. Next slide, please. And yes, the next, the 7th follow-up training is happening on 8th of June, 2023. This will be on opportunities and challenges for integrating data science applications in the practice of evaluation. This is also going to be very informative session. So we invite all of you to get registered. This will be an open platform. So please feel free to get registered for this webinar as well. Next slide. So with that, we are closing today's webinar. Thank you everyone for joining us, all the speakers, especially Khalil. Thank you for your insightful presentation. And let's meet at our next webinar in May. So if you have any questions, please write to SLEvA or APEA, or please follow us on social media. Okay, then thank you very much again, everyone. It's so good to have all of you here. Let's meet again in May. Thank you.
Thank you so much for moderation and for all the production team. Always, as always, very, very nice and amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Khalil. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.